Welcome back to the deep end. I hope you're sitting comfortably, maybe with the lights dim just a little bit today because, well, tonight we're taking a
Oh,
trip.
we definitely are.
Yeah, and we aren't just, traveling across the map. We're actually traveling back in time. We're setting the dial to the swinging 60s, specifically October 1966.
It's just such a fascinating year, really. I mean, the culture was shifting, the music was completely changing, and in this quiet little corner of upstate New York, our entire understanding of reality was kind of being rewritten.
Exactly. But we aren't heading to like a protest march or some big rock concert. We're heading to a dimly lit, I imagine slightly smoky living room in Elmira, New York.
Definitely smoky.
Right. It's Monday night, October 17th, 1966. And the vibe in this room, it's this strange, intoxicating mix of the totally mundane domestic life and the absolutely impossible. It's
Uh,
cozy, sure, but there's this heavy sense that the walls are a lot thinner than they should be.
yeah, that is a perfect description of it. It's really that classic parlor room high strangeness. And for this deep dive, we're looking at a document that captures that atmosphere perfectly. We are analyzing session 294 of the early sessions book 7 of the Seth Material.
Yes, and before we get into the spooky stuff, and trust me, it gets properly, genuinely spooky today, we need to set the table for anyone who might be new to this universe. We have three key players in this room. First, we've got Jane Roberts. She's the medium. She's the one who, goes into a trance. Her voice completely changes. Her mannerisms change, and she speaks for the entity.
Right. And then we have her husband, Robert Butts. He's the scribe. He's the guy sitting there just dutifully scratching down every single word in his own personal form of shorthand. He notes the time. He notes the pauses. He's really the anchor to the physical world in these sessions.
And finally, of course, we have Seth.
Right, Seth. The energy personality essence no longer focused in physical reality as he defines himself, an intellect that just seems to span centuries and continents.
Yeah, and tonight's session is particularly fascinating to me because it feels almost like a double feature. It's two completely different movies playing back to back. The first half is this intensely personal, almost clinical medical diagnosis. It's all about muscles, nerves, and the way our minds literally twist our bodies into knots.
It's essentially somatic therapy from a ghost.
Right. I love that. Somatic therapy from a ghost. And then, without even so much as a commercial break, the whole genre just flips. We go straight from medical drama to like international espionage. Seth decides to engage in what we'd now call remote viewing. He completely leaves the living room in Elmira and projects his consciousness thousands of miles away to the Bahamas just to spy on some friends.
And he's not just looking at the general scenery either. He's describing the cigarette butts in the ashtray. He's describing ghosts walking through the hotel lobby. It is incredibly granular.
It is a totally wild ride. But before we unpack all of that, I do need to state for the record that this podcast will be distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. We are just here to explore the material, analyze the data, and let you decide what to make of it. We aren't selling a cure for hip pain, and we definitely aren't selling travel packages to Nassau.
Though after reading this session, I'm not sure I'd want to go to that specific spot in Nassau anyway.
Fair point, yeah. Way too many drafts, right?
Mhm.
So where should we start? Do we start with the body or the Bahamas?
Let's start with the vessel. Let's start with the physical body, because I think the context of Jane Roberts' physical state that night is really the key to understanding everything that follows.
Okay, let's set the scene. It's 9:00 p.m. Jane Roberts is not in some peaceful Zen state. She hasn't spent the day meditating on a mountaintop.
Far from it, actually. Rob's notes from the start of the session tell us she was just absolutely wiped out. She had just finished her second day as a substitute teacher.
Which, let's be honest, is a job that requires absolute nerves of steel. If you've ever done it, you know. It is a trial by fire. You're walking into a room of complete strangers, kids who are testing your boundaries every single second, and you just have to maintain order. It's physically and mentally draining.
Oh, absolutely. So she comes home, she's completely drained. And on top of that, she's in physical pain. Rive notes she has a, quote, nervous situation in her hip area, and her foot is really bothering her a good deal.
Yeah.
Honestly, if that were me, I'd be on the couch with a heating pad watching television. I would not be inducing a trance to channel a multi-dimensional entity.
No, definitely not. It really speaks to her dedication, I think, or maybe her curiosity. Rob actually suggested she use a technique Seth had taught them previously, which was to demand energy. It's this whole idea that you can command vitality from the universe to replenish yourself.
But Jane admits she hasn't been consistent with it. She basically says she's been too tired to even do the energy work.
That is just such a human moment to me. Like, I know the technique that will fix me, but I am literally too tired to do the technique.
It's the ultimate paradox of burnout. You're too exhausted to do the exact thing that would cure the exhaustion.
Exactly. So, despite the pain, despite the fatigue, she sits in her rocking chair, she takes off her glasses, she enters the trance, and Seth comes through. And he does not start with pleasantries.
No, he goes straight for the jugular. Or, well, I guess the hip in this case.
He addresses the pain immediately, but what's interesting is the tone he uses. It's not just sympathy, it's kind of a gentle scolding. He points out that she hasn't been following his advice regarding her mental focus. And then he drops a concept that I think is one of the most important takeaways from this entire book.
You're talking about the concept of symptom shifting.
Right. Seth says, and I'm quoting here, otherwise, one disappears to be replaced by another.
That really hit me hard when I read it. It's like playing whack-a-mole with your own health. You take a pill and the foot stops hurting, but then 2 days later your shoulder locks up. You fix the shoulder, and boom, you get a migraine.
Because you're treating the smoke, not the fire. You aren't fixing the root cause. And Seth is very explicit about what that root cause is in Jane's specific case.
Inner conflict.
Yeah. He defines pain in a way that is just incredibly visceral. He says the inner conflict you see appears in imbalances now within the system, where sets of muscles battle with other sets.
Sets of muscles battle with other sets. I just want to pause on that image for a second. It's not just that she is tense. It's that her body is literally fighting a civil war.
It's a tug of war inside the skin.
Exactly. Part of her wants to do one thing, right? Her writing, her psychic work, her creative exploration. But another part of her is stressed about the teaching, the finances, the daily grind, just the expectations of regular society. Those opposing desires aren't just abstract thoughts floating around in her brain. They are actual electrical signals being sent to her muscles.
So one muscle group gets the signal to go, and the opposing muscle group gets the signal to stop.
And the result is a cramp. The result is a blockage. The result is this nervous situation in the hip.
So his prescription isn't, take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. The prescription is write your book.
Precisely. Seth tells her that her energy has to be directed toward her main work, specifically her 2 books. He's telling her that alignment is the actual cure. When your purpose and your actions are aligned, the muscles stop fighting each other. The energy flows naturally. When you scatter your energy on things that aren't you, the whole system just jams up.
That is such a heavy lesson for anyone, really, regardless of whether you believe in spirits or channeling. The simple idea that biology is downstream from psychology.
And Seth really puts his money where his mouth is here, so to speak. He performs a laying on of hands from the inside out.
Oh, this part is fascinating. He says, now, once again, I will help the personality relieve the symptoms. He claims to clear the left hip and leg area and a spot on the shoulder, right there during the trance.
But, and this is the crucial but, he warns that it is only a temporary benefit. He can give her a boost. He can clear the jam for the night. But he can't live her life for her.
It's like a mechanic jump-starting your car. They can get you running, but if your alternator is fundamentally broken, you're just going to stall out again in 5 miles.
That's a perfect analogy. The alternator here is her focus on her true work. If she wakes up tomorrow and goes right back to the inner conflict, the pain comes right back.
Okay, so picture this. It's about 9:00 a.m. Seth has just delivered this profound medical diagnosis. He's cleared the energy blockage in Jane's hip. She's probably sitting there in the rocker, eyes closed, breathing a little easier. The room is totally quiet. And then, without missing a single beat, Seth basically says, now let's see what the neighbors are up to.
The pivot is just jarring. We go from deep internal introspection to essentially being a psychic spy.
Let's set the scene for this experiment. This is section 2 of our deep dive, the Nassau remote viewing.
So Rob and Jane have these friends, Bill and Peggy Gallagher. They are on vacation. Now, the rules of this experiment were very strict. Rob wasn't supposed to know where they went. It was supposed to be a double-blind test to see if Seth could actually locate them.
But human error intervened.
As it always does.
Yeah.
Peggy slipped up before they left and mentioned Nassau. So Rob knows the island, but that is all he knows. He doesn't know the hotel, he doesn't know their itinerary, and he certainly doesn't know what they're doing at this specific moment on Monday night.
Right, so Seth says, give us a moment. And then he starts describing what he sees, and he starts with this bizarre phrase, a charade of sorts. Could this be a nightclub act? I do not know.
A charade of sorts. Just keep that phrase in mind. It implies he's seeing something performative or maybe something that looks fake or staged to him.
And then the details just start flying. And this is what I love about the Seth Material. It's this wild mix of the profound and the incredibly specific mundane details. He sees a man in a dark suit standing up, and he notes that it's strange, as if it's the only dark suit around.
Which, if you think about the Bahamas in the 1960s, or even now, makes total sense. It's a tropical vacation destination. Everyone is in linens, light colors, casual wear. A dark, formal suit would stand out like a sore thumb. It's a complete anomaly.
Then he starts throwing out numbers. A 475 or 1475. He mentions the name Gert. Who is Gert? We don't know. Maybe a fellow tourist. But then he says this, which honestly made me laugh out loud. Small balls, but not made of rubber.
That detail always makes me smile.
Yeah.
It's so specific, yet so completely vague.
Yeah?
He's receiving the visual form, small spheres, but he lacks the context to identify them. Is it golf? Is it some sort of lawn game like bocce? Is it just a decoration? He knows what they look like. He knows they aren't rubber, but he can't label them.
It feels like looking through a keyhole, doesn't it? You see pieces of the puzzle, but not the whole picture.
It really does. It's very impressionistic. He's interpreting raw sensory data without the cultural context of actually being there in the room.
But then the picture gets clearer. He starts describing the architecture of where the Gallaghers are staying. He describes a long, narrow section, a roof supported by posts.
And he is very specific about the floor. He says a floor not of wood, perhaps of cement, but of a stone, definitely a stone, or sand-colored stone floor. He calls it a veranda.
A sand-colored stone veranda. That's specific. But the detail that really got me, the one that gave me that chilling realism feeling, was the cigarette bucket.
Oh, yes. Outside of their door, I believe, a large bucket of sorts filled with sand for cigarettes.
I mean, come on. That is such a boring, hyper-specific detail. If you were faking this, if you were just making up a story about a tropical vacation, you'd talk about the palm trees, the sunset, the rum punch. You wouldn't invent a large bucket of sand for cigarette butts outside a door.
No, you wouldn't. It adds a texture of reality that is really hard to fabricate. It's the kind of thing your eye just glosses over in real life, but if you are remote viewing, maybe that shape stands out. It's a geometric form, a cylinder filled with granular material that just catches the psychic eye.
He also describes the geography around this veranda with surprising precision. He says it sticks out with rocks beneath, and beyond that, the ocean. But he mentions a scooped-out circular indentation in the shore.
And he notes swift current because of rocks. He says there is no beach at this specific point, but wide beaches to the left and right. That is a navigational detail. That's not a generic beach scene. That is a specific coordinate on a coastline.
It really creates this sense of place. You can clearly picture the Gallaghers sitting on this stone veranda, smoking cigarettes, dumping them in the sand bucket, just looking out over this rocky, scooped-out cove.
But then the transmission changes frequency entirely.
It does. And this brings us to Section 3, time travel and historical layers. Because Seth isn't content with just watching the Gallaghers, he starts peeling back the layers of reality.
This is where the concept of psychometry comes in. The idea that objects and places hold a memory. Seth starts seeing things that aren't there now but were there then.
The timeline gets totally jumbled. He mentions a green cabaret. He sees a waitress. But listen to the specificity here. A waitress with some mark visible on the arm. A dark mark or bruise, perhaps? Or this could be a patch of dark freckles?
Again, why mention the bruise on the waitress's arm? It's insignificant to the grand scheme of things, but it's a specific visual anchor. It's like a snippet of film from 1920 playing over the reality of 1966.
And then he starts rattling off dates, 1671, 1781, 1842. The vibe shifts from vacation relaxation to something much, much darker.
He mentions dungeons, galleons, and scrolls.
And Abbé Leblanc. It sounds like the start of a pirate movie. But then he says something that confuses him. He says, a connection here I do not understand, concerning cold, frigid, or frosty.
In the Bahamas.
Exactly. He calls it drafty. Now, we are in the tropics, it's hot, but he's feeling a cold draft.
That is classic ghost story material, the cold spot. But Seth explains it, or implies it, not as a meteorological event, but as an energetic one. He connects it immediately to death, he says, and with many deaths in the past.
So the cold isn't air conditioning. The cold is the energetic signature of death.
Or the signature of a dungeon, a place of immense suffering. Seth is perceiving the temperature of the emotional memory of the place. To his senses, that trauma literally feels cold. It feels drafty.
So we have the Gallaghers on the veranda, and right beneath them, energetically speaking, are dungeons and cold spots. It's like the hotel is built on a graveyard.
Which, given the history of the Caribbean piracy, colonialism, slavery, war, is entirely possible. The land remembers.
And then, snap, we are back to 1966 consumerism.
Right. He suddenly sees a shop window with an orange awning.
An orange awning, a very vivid color.
And inside, or in the window, a particular grown woman's ensemble with a high-priced tag, a three-piece outfit. And he suggests our friend, the cat lover, that's Peggy, enters this shop.
It's such a jarring contrast. Dungeons, death. Ooh, that's a really nice dress.
It shows how Seth perceives reality. It's all one big soup to him. The death in 1671 is just as real and present as the dress in the window in 1966. There are just different frequencies on the exact same radio dial.
That's a key insight for the listener. We tend to think of time as a line, right? Past, present, future. Seth sees it as depth. He's looking down through the water of time. He sees the fish swimming at the surface, the Gallaghers. But he also sees the shipwreck at the bottom, the dungeons. Both exist simultaneously in the exact same space.
And he doesn't judge one as more real than the other. They are just data points.
Speaking of shipwrecks and violence, let's talk about the statue. This is probably the most complex narrative he weaves during this entire session, and it's the one that feels the most like a historical mystery.
Yes. He describes a circular formation with row houses. And in this circle, there is a statue. But it's not a statue of a saint or a liberator.
No. Seth calls it a commemoration of a stabbing.
He says it is connected with a general, but I believe the man whose image is represented by the statue stabbed the general. It would seem to be the commemoration of a murder to me.
History is usually written by the victors, so here we have a statue honoring the murderer, not the victim. Seth seems to find this fascinating.
And he gives a whole backstory to this hero. He says the figure in the statue was once a cobbler.
A cobbler. A shoemaker turned assassin.
And it came from a place sounding like Guatemala or San Guatemala.
Yeah.
And he had two brothers, one of whom worked against him.
It's like a Shakespearean tragedy played out in the Caribbean. A cobbler, a betrayed brother, a general stab, and now a statue in a circle of row houses.
And Seth provides dates again, maybe 1861 or 1681. He's trying to pin it down. But the narrative is so strong, he senses the emotional resonance of that statue. It's not just a piece of stone, it's a solidified memory of a violent act.
It makes you wonder who this general was and why the cobbler hated him so much.
And why the town decided to build a statue for the guy with the knife.
Exactly. What's interesting is that Jane later says she didn't see the statue visually.
Right, and this gets us into section 4, the mechanics of the trance. How is Jane actually doing this? It's not just watching a movie screen in her mind.
No. Rob asks her about the experience afterwards, and Jane says she felt really in the scene during the last delivery.
She describes it as bilocation.
Bilocation, being in two places at once.
She says while she was talking about the white road going up the hill in Nassau, she saw it in correct perspective.
Oh.
She felt like she was physically standing on the road looking up.
But, and this is the mind-bending part, she simultaneously knew she was sitting in her rocking chair in Elmira.
It's a dual consciousness. She hasn't left her body empty. She has extended her awareness. It's like having a camera drone. You are standing on the ground holding the controller, but your vision is up in the sky. You are here, but you are also there.
And Rob makes a really important point in his notes about Jane's geography skills.
Or lack thereof, really. Rob admits that he is the map geek in the family. He knows the Caribbean geography. Jane. Rob says if you took the names off a map, Jane couldn't fill them in. She has a terrible sense of geography.
Which actually adds a layer of credibility. If Rob were the medium, you could argue, oh, he just remembered a map he saw in National Geographic. But Jane is flying blind.
Literally flying. She doesn't have a subconscious bank of Bahamian topography to draw from. When she describes the curves of the road or the rocks, that is raw data coming in.
And regarding the statue, she said she didn't see it, but she knew it was there. That's a distinction I want to unpack.
It's the difference between clairvoyance, clear seeing, and claircognizance, clear knowing. Sometimes the data comes as a visual image, like the orange awning. Sometimes it comes as a packet of information, like there is a statue here, and it represents a murder. The medium has to translate both types of data into speech.
It must be exhausting. No wonder she needs to manage her energy better. You're processing visual data, emotional data, historical data, and trying to speak it out loud while your husband scribbles it down.
And amidst all this heavy processing, Seth still finds time for a pun.
He does. We have to mention the St. George bit.
He's describing the location, and he says, a saint here and a gorge. Or perhaps this is St. George.
A saint in a gorge. St. George.
It's a dad joke from the spirit realm.
But it serves a purpose, doesn't it? It shows that his personality is totally intact. He's not a robot computer spitting out coordinates. He's a wit.
And it also might be a clue. There is a St. George's Wharf in Nassau. There's a St. George's Quay. He might be giving a very literal location marker wrapped in a pun. It's efficient communication.
So we've got the medical diagnosis, the spy mission, the history lesson, and the bad jokes. When you zoom out and look at session 294 as a whole, what are we really looking at? This brings us to our summary.
I think we are looking at the fluidity of reality.
Go on.
Well, look at the structure. We start with the physical body. Jane's hip hurts. Why? Because her thoughts are conflicted. Her non-physical mind is twisting her physical muscles. That's lesson 1. The inner creates the outer.
Right. Thoughts become things.
Then we move to Nassau. Seth shows that distance is an illusion. He can see the Gallaghers as clearly as he sees Jane. That's lesson 2. Space is not a barrier to consciousness.
And then the history.
Exactly. Lesson 3. Time is not a barrier. He sees the 17th century dungeon and the 20th century dress shop simultaneously.
So so for you, the listener here, is pretty massive. It's not just a cool ghost story. It's a complete restructuring of how we view our daily life.
It is. It suggests that you, right now, are sitting in a soup of energy. There is history layered over your living room. There are influences from your own thoughts shaping your physical health. And, potentially, there's a consciousness that can zip across the ocean and see what you're smoking.
That is the part that lingers with me. The idea that we are surrounded by layers of history we can't see. When I walk down the street, am I walking through a ghost? Am I walking through a 17th century cobbler?
According to this session, yes,
Yeah.
you are. The past isn't gone. It's just transparent to our physical eyes. But to the inner senses, it's vibrant, it's drafty, it's cold, it has emotional weight.
And the connection back to the start of the deep dive, that inner conflict. If we are walking through all this history and we are generating our own mental storms, no wonder our hips hurt.
It's a lot of data to process, and if you don't focus, if you don't, as Seth told Jane, direct your energy toward your main work, you get clogged up. The system jams.
It's a call to mindfulness, really. Be aware of what you are thinking because it's shaping your body. And be aware of where you are because the place has a memory.
And maybe, just maybe, be aware that if you were wearing a dark suit in the Bahamas, someone might be taking notes.
That's the real takeaway. The universe is watching, and it thinks your fashion choices are strange.
A charade of sorts.
I love that line. A charade of sorts. It makes human behavior sound so performative.
Which often it is.
Before we wrap up, I want to touch on one last thing, the humanity of it. We talk about Seth as this all-knowing entity, but he's so concerned about Jane.
He is. He's a teacher. He's tough on her. Half measures will not work. But he's doing it because he needs the vessel to be healthy. He needs the radio to be tuned properly so the broadcast can come through clear.
It's a partnership, and Rob just dutifully writing it all down, trying to figure out if there really is a statue of a murderer in Nassau.
It's a beautiful snapshot of their lives together.
It really is. Well, we have covered a lot of ground today. From the nerve endings in a hip to the rocky shores of the Caribbean.
And the dungeons beneath them.
If this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, and honestly, how could it not? We highly encourage you to go to the source.
Absolutely. Don't just take our word for it. Read the material. The richness of the text goes far beyond what we can cover in an hour.
You can find this session in session 294 of the Early Sessions, Book 7 of the Seth Material. It is published by the New Awareness Network.
And you can find their books and more information at sethcenter.com/the early sessions. It's an absolute treasure trove.
We barely scratched the surface of what Seth covers in the thousands of sessions they recorded. But this one, session 294, it's a gem.
It's a perfect microcosm of the whole phenomena.
So, as you go about your week, maybe pay attention to those random pains in your shoulder. Ask yourself, what muscles are battling muscles? What inner conflict is trying to get your attention?
And when you travel, look for the anomalies, the orange awnings, the sand buckets, the cold spots in the warm air.
The world is weirder and more wonderful than we think. And here's one last provocative thought to mull over. If Seth can see the layers of history perfectly preserved in Nassau, what future layers are being laid down right now by your actions?
Yeah.
Are you building a monument, or are you just leaving behind a bucket of sand?
Something to think about.
Thank you for listening to this deep dive. Remember, thoughts are things. Be careful what you build with them.
Until next time.
See you in the next session.